Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Her Messy Bun. I'm Danielle, and today we are going to talk about all things messy action. So, what is messy action? When I hear this term, I think of just do something, start somewhere, take any form of action, etc., etc. And while that idea can be both invigorating and scary, I do want to point out it can also be debilitating for some people, especially people with mental health issues, ADHD, or trauma. I would assume that the same goes for all neurodivergent people, but I don't want to speak on your behalf. So if you are neurodivergent, aside from ADHD, I would love to know if you think that this is true. So the reason I find messy action to be debilitating is because sometimes you don't know where to even start with it. Even if it is messy action, you still don't know where to start. But today's topic is, does it work? So let's break it down. If you are able to take messy action, we all know action leads to clarity, results, and the ability to learn from our mistakes. And when you take messy action, you most likely will be starting in the middle of the timeline and have to work both backwards and forwards. But starting allows you to, start. So I've listed out a few pros and a few cons, and I really think that it's going to help you decide if messy action is suitable for you. So the positive side is that it can lead to overcoming your fears. You can learn how to shift gears easier. You become more adaptive, learning how to move forward when you're overwhelmed. And finally, you see the path that you're standing on. The negative side of this is that it can lead to a deeper form of imposter syndrome because you now have even more messy work to do. You can feel anxious because you're constantly playing catch up. You might feel more frustration or disappointment because the path that you are standing on is actually a maze and you're in the middle with no clear direction of what's the start and what's the finish. And then finally, burnout. You can burn out before your concept is even completed. So does messy action work? Well, from the breakdown, it does. But what comes along with messy action, is it worth it? Clearly, there are some strong pros and cons to messy action. And if you don't have a coach or consultant, or you just can't afford to hire one to help you start with a personalized action plan for your business, that's totally okay. As someone who has taken so much messy action in the past and experienced both sides of the coin here, as well as guided many clients out of that maze that is messy action, I've broken down the basic concept of how we obtain a clear and personalized action plan, as well as what helped me and my clients throughout the process. Now, because I don't know your goals specifically, I did have to get a little broad here, but that broadness will help you on multiple levels and in future events as well. So we've seen the positives of messy action, and we know what they can have, and we know that they exist, but how do we prevent majority of the negatives from happening? So I've listed out a few things. The first one is morning pages. And I know I say this all the time, but morning pages and writing it down is honestly one of the best habits to get into as a solo entrepreneur. And the reason is when you get in the habit of morning pages, it becomes a ritual for you to brain dump all of your ideas and all of your concepts down to the point where months and years down the line, it's going to be second nature for you to create and write down rough drafts within your morning pages, because it's just all of your thoughts and your ideas are getting down on paper and you're finally able to process them without having to process them on the computer or process them in your mind. You're literally seeing it on paper, and it is such a relief to be able to be like, oh, I want to do this idea. This idea is exactly what I have been thinking about for weeks or days or months or however long it might be. And so morning pages really, really helps people do that. I'm not the creator of morning pages. It's a concept created in the artist way. However, I do have a morning pages group. So if you need help doing morning pages and you want the accountability that comes with doing it with other people, go ahead and check out my membership, Consciously Creative. And by all means, I would be more than happy to have you in the morning pages. But by all means, if you think that this is a solo act for you to do, morning pages was designed as a solo act. I'm just there for the accountability. The next step, or not step, but the next tip would be defining the steps it takes to reach this goal and then organizing them in order from start to finish. This one might not be achievable for most people, especially if this is your first time ever trying to reach a goal outside of work or school or something where somebody actually gives you the kind of goal you're meant to reach. So personalized goals and new business goals that you've never reached before, this one might be a little bit hard for you, but and the next tip, educating yourself on the hows and looking at past experience to learn from your mistakes on other start to finish projects that you've done can really define the breakdown of these steps from start to finish. So combining the two of those ideas together could be a strong potential for you to avoid the negatives with messy action. But this next tip is like chef's kiss. This one is my favorite. When my clients and I are working together and we have when they're stuck in messy action and I have to physically try to see where they're at with all of these different concepts and ideas and action plans and whatever it might be, but they're in this maze of messy action and I have to somehow find a direct path from start to finish for them that aligns with them and what they're actually trying to achieve. We create a mind map. So my biggest tip, this is number 4, is create a mind map of your idea so you can see what concepts and actions are entangled within each other in order to go from A to Z more smoothly. So if you don't know what a mind map is, it's pretty much you start with your idea and then you create a line and you say the next, like whatever you think is a next action step for it. And you just keep going. So it's really hard to explain for the podcast, but if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, hopefully these little hand gestures work for you. Otherwise, go ahead and Google it, find it on Pinterest. You can even YouTube how to create your own mind map. It is honestly one of the best tools to do, especially if you're trying to help somebody get out of their maze of messy action. But I digress. Create that mind map. It will help you organize your concepts and actions that are entangled within each other. And you'll start seeing like what action needs to be done first in order to complete the concept versus just starting in the middle or being a little confused, And my final tip is research. There is a lot of people out there. There are a lot of people out there. Let's use proper English. There are a lot of people out there that have done something similar to what you are trying to achieve. It may not be the same exact thing, but it's similar, especially as a self-employed entrepreneur. So I don't want you to get overwhelmed with research, but I want you to understand that research will benefit you when it comes to the how-tos of things. I used to use YouTube for everything or listen to a podcast detailing a start to finish list of goals similar to what I'm trying to achieve. And I think the best tip that goes along with researching, especially when you're like kind of debilitated to even take action in general, the best tip would be to only allow yourself so much time, so you don't want to research for days and days and months and months and months, and then just keep using research as a reason why you haven't started. You want to give yourself a time limit or a time frame of how much research you're willing to do, how many hours, how many days, sometimes how many weeks, depending on how big your project is and how little to none education you have for that. I don't think that was good English, but We don't edit this podcast, so so you're gonna just get it all from me today. Anyways, research. So let's go over that again. Morning pages is my first tip. Write it all down. Once you have it written all down, these again are not in any order, but once you have it written all down, see if there's any steps within your brain dump to be able to define the steps. That made no sense. See if what you've written down has steps built into it, and then define which ones are in the beginning versus which ones will be in the end. The next thing is to educate yourself on how's, and look at your past experience of how you actually do things and what benefits you and how you do things. So what's the easiest way for you to do things? The fourth idea is to create a mind map so that you can disentangle all of the actions and concepts and understand what's actually aligned with each other versus thinking you are at point A trying to go to point B, but really you're at point A trying to go to point Z, and that just won't make any sense or it'll be too hard. And the fifth thing is to research. Find those people that you trust, that you can learn from, that provide start to finish checklists of how to do things. You can honestly find how to build a car on YouTube, I feel at this point. So just check out YouTube, search how to insert your idea, and then see if what pops up. If nothing pops up that is actually educational, then go to podcasts. And the reason why I say YouTube before podcasts on this aspect is because hearing people talk, as well as being able to read what they put on screen, as well as being able to watch how they're doing it, is extremely beneficial for our learning process. So if you have to do messy action, which most of us do in order to start, I want you to go into it with as much knowledge as you can, because getting stuck in that maze of bullshit work is honestly a dream killer. So thank you again for tuning in to yet another episode of Her Messy Bun. But before I go, please make sure that you tell everybody you know about this podcast. My goal, like I said in the first episode, is to hit the charts running, and I need your help with that. So subscribe, get notified, and spread the word, because Her Messy Bun podcast is going to be where it's at. Thanks again, and until next week.